So pause once again, close your eyes, and just bring mindfulness to the inner landscape, noticing with curiosity, openness, and non-judgment what's happening in this moment, in your mind, body, emotional body. And now you can gently open your eyes and thank your partner. Okay, and let's take just a few minutes to bring your voices in so you can turn towards the circle again. And I would love to simply know what brought you here. I would love to know what you noticed in that first listening exercise, just to bring our voices in a little bit. And as some of you heard me say, those of you who were here last night, when we move into times that we're sharing as a group, there's a few very simple guidelines that are useful. And the first is that we practice deep listening in our time together. Deep listening is the foundation of a meditation practice. It's the foundation of living in meditation, so that we use our time together for that. The second is that we really claim this as a space that is confidential, where we can be honest and open and trust that even someone we know isn't going to bring that thing we set up with us at a later time. Might ask if it's okay to, all right? And the third is just that I really encourage people to show up as you are, knowing that sometimes we think we have to show up sounding wise or looking good or silly things like that, okay? So anyone be willing to start us off?
Well.
And remind me your name?
Oh, James.
Thanks, James.
I'm here because I've seen you in the catalog before, and I haven't for other retreats or sessions, and I haven't been able to go to those. And I was looking at the catalog, and I wasn't sure if there was something I wanted to do this summer, and then I reread it and noticed you again. I'm like, this sounds interesting, and I wanted to come to one of the things you did before. So I'm just here. I'm new to meditation, and it just sounded like an interesting topic. So I wanted to check it out.
Yeah. Well, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. You're going to get a full day immersion in meditation. Very good. Who else? What did people notice in that first exercise of listening and of arriving here? Yeah.
I'm Michelle.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things, and I noticed it last night when we did the exercise also this week, is that one, the person listening is looking at me. They're not distracted by a phone. They're not looking around the room at who else or what other conversations are happening. So there's this absolute being in front of me who is paying attention. And it's an incredible feeling of having that. And thinking,
Yes.
Unfortunately my mind drifted to those all the times I'm with friends who are doing multiple things and telling me they're listening.
Yes. And just to emphasize, you use the word being. There's this incredible being in front of me. We are being together. We are learning how to be in presence together. And this is where we remember our innate capacity for oneness, where we remember non-separation and interconnection, where we awaken. And so this is really, really important. Even listening, someone can take as a doing. I'm going to do listening. And people's bodies are kind of leaning forward and they're trying to figure out what you're saying. And that's not it, folks. We're talking about learning how to be together. I would suggest that most human beings spend a lot of time reacting to the present rather than being present. And everything that we're doing in meditation and mindfulness is about learning how to be present together. This relates already to the deep feminine because it is, one of the teachings I'll offer today is that it's when we're falling into fear-based mentality that we push away vulnerability, and trade it in for defense, okay, protection. And the deep feminine teaching is very much about embracing vulnerability and setting down that kind of fear. So thank you for that. Any other questions or reflections just upon getting here? Can we simply take one moment to go around and just listen to everyone's name as we begin our time together? Okay. Anne, would you start us off?
I'm Anne. Amy Noel. 2 names together, Amy Noel. I'm Tanya.
Rick. I'm Jeff.
I'm Shanali.
Renelle.
James.
Julia.
Rosa.
Lindsay.
I'm Sharon.
And I'm Herb.
Michelle.
Mike.
Annette.
Eden. Okay, thank you. So I'm going to move into giving an introduction to this topic of the sacred feminine. And I'm going to check in with Sharon, who so kindly is here to video today. Are we all set?
We're all set.
And we'll just be videoing this part, okay? And are you okay if I also turn on my phone to record this? Okay, thank you. Okay. So I will share first that a part of me is surprised to be embarking on doing quite a bit of teaching on the topic of the sacred feminine, the deep feminine, and the rebalancing between the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine. A part of me is surprised because it has been such a core and foundational aspect of my Dharma practice, of my spiritual path, but it's not something I seeked out. It emerged. It's crystal clear in the teachings as I perceive them, this healing, this rebalancing, this return to wholeness that has everything to do with reclaiming the sacred feminine and the sacred masculine, okay? I come to Buddhism from the background of being a sustainability educator, a sustainability consultant, being a long-term lover of nature and organic farmer, and just having a fundamental understanding that in order to restore a healthy relationship with the planet, in order to redeem a sense of ourselves as a restorer species instead of a depleting species, and in order to just navigate these challenging times that we face with such phenomenon such as climate change, we are required to rebalance the sacred masculine and sacred feminine and to bring back in this understanding. When I speak of feminine and masculine in today's context, I'm not so much speaking about conventional gender roles. I'm not speaking about some of the archetypes that we've been brought up with for how a female should be or how a male should be. That's not what we're here for. I'm talking about some of the deeper fundamental qualities in nature, okay, and in human nature that have to do with the balance of yin and yang, feminine, masculine, dark, light, passive, active, receptive, expressive, lunar, solar. All of these qualities that I'm naming point to something, but they can only point to it. The deep feminine and also the deep masculine are a profound inner experience. You know, in today's world, we've lost most of our spiritual language that as a species we had a treasure chest of for a long time in human history. We've lost most of that language. Today, most of our language could be categorized as marketplace language. So it's very difficult to point to these things. It's very difficult. A good teacher can point to them, but you can only receive it not through cognitive understanding, through experience. And meditation, mindfulness, awareness practice, these are pathways to remembering, okay? So I'll offer a disclaimer about language, because I'm aware that in today's world, there is an absolute gender war going on. And there is so much flammability and reactivity around anything when we start using the language of gender and the language of masculine, feminine. The human ego loves duality and loves to see through duality and binary language, so we love to say it's this, not that, and this is different than that. And I offer that because my job today, I am humbled by. It's to share this topic and to give you an experience of these teachings from a place that acknowledges the limitations of language and from a place that is designed to help you to perceive the wholeness and the interweaving, the oneness of the sacred masculine and sacred feminine. Not so much to leave here saying, well, I've reclaimed the sacred feminine and dissed the masculine, and so here we go. Nothing like that. And so just to pause, if you're coming in late, there's a chair right here to my left. So let's all take in a deep breath, just so you can really let yourself stay in the spirit of deep listening as you take in my words. I will offer that one of the reasons this topic has begun to really turn me on is that through my years as a Dharma practitioner and a Dharma teacher, I've become aware that patriarchy, because it has been around so long, just a domination of one half of our species over another, which has also caused a human domination mentality over the planet quite a bit. It has infused every spiritual practice, including Buddhism. And so this means the very popular notion of enlightenment, I question. I see that it has some patriarchal bias. We can think of enlightenment both as been defined by the Buddhists per se, but also the movement, the 17th and 18th century, very much towards rationalism and transcendence. I would describe this as an up and away approach to spirituality. Let's get there to the light and away from the dark as fast as we can. Let's understand this and in fact colonize it as fast as we can. Let's leave the body out of our spiritual practice. And in fact, let's create a whole sex-spirit divide that traumatizes humanity for endless time, right? So I see this kind of thing. And when I look at the rebalancing of the sacred masculine and sacred feminine, I'm really clear that the two have to work hand in hand for any of us to really awaken and also to create a more peaceful world, to find wholeness within ourselves. These are qualities that we all have within us and that we do need to bring into balance. The feminine, the yin, I might describe, and I'll use different language as we go throughout the day, but I'm going to begin by giving the quality of conscious allowing. And even in our opening meditation, I invited a lot of you to be with what is here, to allow your experience to be as it is, okay? Not needing to change anything or make anything wrong or push anything away, but consciously allowing life to move through us. In a way, surrendering to the moment, surrendering to the spaciousness within. This is such a huge part of meditation. I would describe as a starting point the conscious masculine, the divine masculine, as a form of conscious protecting, conscious boundaries. And so, just as an example, even when I'm teaching sitting meditation to people who are new, I'll invite them to be aware of this balance of yin and yang. There's an invitation to, and this invitation is so revolutionary in our world. It is so revolutionary in our world. It is so life-changing. It's the invitation to drop into a place of absolute non-doing, of absolute being, as we were just speaking about, surrendering to being here. It's a place of relaxing into spacious awareness, becoming aware, how delicious, of the space within and out, the space that is always here, but that when our attention is caught in the busy, buzzing, conditioned mind, the mind of separation, we're not available to the space, and it's the space in which there's absolute constant connectedness. It's the web of connection, okay? So, again, this balance of active and passive, there's great medicine in learning how to drop in to non-doing, absolute receptivity. And how many of you, out of curiosity, have tasted this or taste this daily in your meditation practice? Just raise your hand. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And know that I'm taking grades and noticing who didn't raise your hand. Just kidding. And so to balance that, there's an absolute need for the conscious masculine or more active, expressive aspect in an embodied meditation practice. And so, for instance, the structure required, the discipline, the tenacity to show up each day to meditate. Those of you who have attempted or have established a meditation practice know this is no casual task. This requires real conscious boundaries, as I define the masculine. Also the courage and tenacity and willingness to learn to drop it when we get caught in the conditioned mind. This is a lifelong and loving, compassionate discipline. So we're learning both this balance of the absolute surrender, the non-doing, the relaxing into just being, spacious, open, emptiness. Wow, what a relief in a world that's so bent on filling space, on doing. Anyone? On productivity and getting somewhere. Again, enlightenment, the up and away approach. Am I supposed to be getting somewhere? Am I there yet? Am I past this yet? Have I arrived yet? Am I doing it right? Am I attaining? Am I attaining knowledge? Okay. I'm present to just feeling really touched by this topic and by the fact that we're all gathering for it today. Part of the imbalance that we see in our world is that human beings have been so deeply colonized by fear, And so, for instance, the masculine, some of the archetype that we now see as the masculine is not so much these elements of the divine masculine as I'm describing, but the fear-based masculine. And on the other side, the fear-based feminine, okay? And so the fear-based masculine tends to go from that place of conscious boundaries, protection, to a place of domination, subordination, power over. Out of fear, a sense that I need to always be the one in power. I need to always have power over. Therefore, something like vulnerability, the natural truth of human fragility, let's push all of that as far away as we can. We need to appear strong. We need to stay strong. let's pause and consider that this mentality is always affirming the illusion of separation and the illusion of competition. There is no inherent competition because there is no inherent separation. From clear seeing, we are one. But we live in a world that has become pretty completely based on competition. Will you agree with me? Pretty based on domination, subordination. We're playing that out amongst the human beings. We're playing that out with our animal friends. We're playing that out with our planet. And one of the reasons I began mentioning my background in passion and sustainability is that this is what I see as the core of what has led us so far away from living in harmony and partnership with this incredible planet that we inhabit. We've gone so far that we're all in a very challenged place right now, yeah? So again, let's pause and just connect with your breath. Really staying connected within yourself as you listen to my words, and notice how my words speak to your own experience of being human, okay? I want to emphasize meditation practice, awareness practice, as a path for learning to befriend and release fear so that we can remember who we are underneath and beyond that fear, so that we can remember true nature. And so whereas the conversation in popular culture right now is so us versus them, me versus you, in terms of gender and male-female, there's a lot more conversation about let's bring awareness to the wrongdoings of patriarchy, and then that makes people feel bad, and that makes people feel righteous, and that creates even more othering, people following. So I really invite us to consider fear. Fear itself is what we, in any gender, any form that we're taking, this is what leads us astray. And that each of us has the invitation, simply through becoming more present. If you start on the path of awareness and waking up, you will be required, if you are choosing an embodied practice, to remember and cultivate both the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine within yourself. So this is really, really beautiful invitation, really profound invitation. As a teacher, I have been so fascinated to witness how many of my students, and to witness in myself, how being on this path, and as you know, conditioning that is no longer serving us, limiting beliefs that we've maybe been ingrained with, they begin to reveal themselves to us, and thus they begin to fall away. This is part of finding freedom. I've been fascinated by how natural it is for people on this path to have revealed to them misconceptions, distortions they've been fed, ways they've been limiting themselves, okay, based on ideas of masculine, feminine, ideas of how women should be, ideas of how men should be, ideas about what's important in the world. And so, for instance, because we've been quite imbued with patriarchy, there's a focus on our culture of productivity, 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 competition, competition, getting somewhere, and not an equal balance with restoration, regeneration, connectivity. Are people with me on that? And that's impacted each and every one of us here in some way. I know that in my own life, I'll share that as I first began to commit to my meditation practice, and I began to have so much conditioning revealed to me, so many limiting beliefs and unconscious motivations that are simply not true revealed to me, there was a huge relaxation that began to happen, a huge realignment with my authentic self, with my authentic pace, with that which is true for this being. And in the experience, this included an absolute coming home to the deep feminine. I didn't know I was off balance. I had no sense of that before I came to practice. And I was mostly, if I was ever having internal conversation about the feminine or masculine, it wasn't about the divine, it was about some messages I'd been fed, some horrible messages, and oh, not feminine enough, and too feminine, too sensitive, and not masculine enough. And do anyone relate? Yeah. So through practice, the settling into what named itself to me, what showed itself to me as the deep feminine, was completely relieving. It was a coming home. And this equally allowed in me access to the sacred masculine. Again, conscious protection, conscious boundaries, the discipline and ability to have structure where structure is needed. Even as a teacher, when I create this space for us to come together and drop into spacious awareness, I create this through my conscious masculine, okay? So this was incredibly freeing. And it's all very interesting because my path was to, for a period of time, leave this world and choose to live as a Zen Buddhist monk, which I did for 7.5 years. Gave away all my belongings, shaved my head, moved to the monastery. I had less identification as a female than ever before in my entire life during that time. I identify as a female, and I've less identification with that than ever. It didn't matter at all. Yet it was in that space that I connected with the deeper feminine and the deeper masculine, whole together. How beautiful in a world that's so intent on warring. Us versus them, me versus you. And I've become very clear that these teachings are important because my path has so clearly been a path into the body, in and not away from, down and into, not up and away, down and into the body in every moment and in every situation. The darkness I've experienced as a human being, and like it or not, we are all invited to experience light and darkness, okay? Darkness is a teacher. Down into the darkness, learning to be with and meet the darkness with a fully open heart, the same way I would meet lightness. That's an invitation that comes from the feminine, I would suggest. The surrender and just being with whatever's here. Surrendering and opening our hearts to whatever's here. Instead of, I'm afraid of that, because of fear of that, I need to push it away, I need to appear strong again, I need to defend against, I need to wrong myself for having that. These are dangerous things. This is what leads to spiritual bypassing. This misunderstanding, I would suggest. And there's a ton of spiritual bypassing going on in our world. Does everyone know what I mean when I use that phrase? So by spiritual bypassing, I mean that using, in the name of spiritual practice, or in the name of something spiritual that we're engaging in, we're actually bypassing. We're going right past, we're pushing away the shadows that are ours to work with, that which we see in ourselves being revealed that we don't think fits how we've seen ourselves, the pain that gets revealed to us that we don't want to deal with, the human development that is being gifted to us through genuine practice. We push it away. We push it away saying, no, I need to keep it light. Isn't practice about being happy all the time? Isn't it about staying positive? That's what Oprah says. I love Oprah, and on the cover of her magazine, I've seen a lot of keep it positive. And I don't find it helpful because it feeds the duality between positive, negative. It feeds this notion that we're trying to push away the dark and get to the light. We're human, we contain it all, and we have the absolute capacity in presence present moment awareness to be with it all, to meet it all with welcome. No fear needed, okay? So again, just pause, noticing where your attention is, staying connected within your own being. I'll share a personal story around this topic. And so many of you know that I left the Zen monastery where I trained, not because I wanted to in that moment of time. I felt that I had surrendered to that way of life and truly loved it. The spirit of service that one gets to connect with and live every day with as a monk is the most delicious thing in the entire world. And it's often missing from our service and community, from our day-to-day life in this busy world. So I got bit by a tick and didn't know it, and I contracted Lyme. So I had fallen ill, and we didn't know what it was. It actually took 13 years to find out what it was. But after a few years of trying to maintain all of my responsibilities and run the gardens there and live out on the land in a way that takes a lot of physical resilience and a lot of emotional, spiritual resilience. The latter two I was having, but the physical was really hard. So we decided I would go to be with my family for a few months and see if I could get medical attention. My family happened to live in Los Angeles, so from silent monastery in the wilderness to big noisy city. And in that time, at first, a doctor, thinking that I had fibromyalgia, put me on a medication that he said, this is going to make things a lot more painful, and you're just going to have to lie down for as many weeks as it takes, or longer than that. And so it was like 2 months of just being on my back and being in a lot of pain, and watching some of my fear stories come up. Wow, what if this doesn't heal? What if this doesn't heal? You know, as you listen, some of you who have gone through your own health issues or been there for others with chronic health issues know what a vulnerable place that is. What if this doesn't heal? What will become of me? And who will love me? And I'm not capable of anything right now. And it was scary to a part of me. And as I listened in, I became aware that a part of me still carried a piece of conditioning from my society and my family very strongly that said, you are loved based on what you do. Your worth is dependent on what you contribute. How many of you can relate to that? And your worth is dependent on how productive you are. How many of you, if you really watch yourself, that's a major motivation each day of life. How productive am I being? Am I being productive enough? So this comes, I would suggest, from the fear-based patriarchal mentality, okay? It's not true for us. It's not balanced. It doesn't equally value restoration and regeneration, with which we look at planet Earth as a requirement in nature. Productivity, regeneration. Productivity, restoration. So as I saw this playing out, there was just a, wow, I'm humbled by this. And then in came a very clear, crystal clear voice which said to me, your presence is your greatest contribution. Your presence is your contribution. And I got that. I really graduated to a new level of my being is my contribution. And in that, a larger surrender happened for me than had happened before. A larger surrender of all of this conditioning that I've pointed to today, this morning, around the notion that productivity or doing or active or essentially me overvaluing the masculine and undervaluing the feminine within this living being. Does that make sense to everyone? That completely shifted in that time. It completely shifted. And what happened next really surprised me in some level. What happened next was that I got to drop so much more deeply into the sacred feminine, understanding, being in absolute non-doing, absolute allowing, absolute receptivity, dropping into emptiness even more fully than I had, or with even more permission than I had. That I found the innate power in non-doing, the innate energy in emptiness. So there's a teaching in Buddhism that you may have heard, emptiness is fullness, and fullness is emptiness. But I think it's very misunderstood, actually, this teaching. And I got to understand how, in each moment of our lives, choosing to drop into this emptiness, this void, this mystery, from which we might say everything arose from and everything returns to, the space of interconnected awareness, carries with it an absolute fertility, an absolute fullness, a power. So this is, I'm going to pause in a few minutes and give us some time to reflect and write, but this is the teaching that bridges what is it that's so missing in our world right now. And that is, because of fear, we've all been conditioned to believe that the way to find power and the way to navigate this scary thing called life is only power over, domination, subordination. And each and every one of us can look within and see how we might be playing this out. We see how the collective is playing it out. Just open the newspaper, yeah? But how are each of us individually playing it out? Even just in a moment of, I'm feeling vulnerable, so I need to put up a protected shield, or I'm feeling weak and judging that, and so I need to hide or mask myself. Or I'm feeling tired, and so I need to judge that because I'm supposed to be being productive and strong. People relating to this? Yeah. And so the notion that power requires a masculine, sacred masculine, awareness within, when that is what serves the whole, to have conscious boundaries and structure, and power requires a sacred feminine awareness inside. The ability to just learn to be with one another, to drop into our naked experience of life without needing to change it and solve it, to receive. So someone says something or offers their, let's say, their political opinion. The unhealthy masculine thinks it needs to immediately react. I need to combat that quickly. I need to come back and sound strong. From this, what I'm describing as the sacred feminine, it's just to receive, to allow, to receive, to allow, and to listen. And then from that listening arises conscious response. It's a very different thing. We are so hungry and in need of conscious response that comes more from the we mentality than I versus you in our world. And so some of today's teachings, as you know, will be an invitation to deepen our embodiment of relational mindfulness and some of the qualities of attunement, allowing, receptivity, and openness to vulnerability that can serve us in everyday life and that absolutely serve our awakening. You know, these are tools that equally are for ordinary daily life as human beings and tools for the path of mysticism, if that's what your heart calls for. It's the same thing. It's about waking up beyond the sphere of separation. And one of the things that stops people is, but this isn't what my society's doing right now. This isn't how my neighbors are doing it. So don't I need to just keep up this game? Don't I need to keep up this illusion? Anyone know that one? Yeah. No, you don't, because no one is being nourished by the illusion, no one. And beyond appearances, no one deep within is is being fed by your choice to claim fear rather than authenticity. Okay, so that said, thank you for being here today.